Hello survivors and welcome to today's video. So today's video is going to be a follow-up to our breeding for mutations video that we did not so long ago, and this is going to show you how to get more mutations quicker once you hit that 20 out of 20. So he's worked very hard on this and I think you're going to find it very helpful. So if you're going to enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you're not already. We have so much ARK on here and so much more to come. Right, without further ado, I'll let him take it away.
Okay, so this video is a follow-on to our last breeding video. So if you haven't seen the last one, I would advise to go and watch that one first. That one will show you how to set up for stacking your mutations in the stats that you want, and also how to read the incubators and how to make sure you keep your lines clean. This one is advancing on what happens when you get to 20 out of 20 and the grind really kicks off. So if you haven't watched that other video, go back and watch that one and get yourself up to 20 out of 20, and then after that this video is going to be very helpful to you. So anyway, since the last video, you may notice that I've added more females. So I've added an extra 100 females up the top here. They're a bit hard to see because they've glitched out and slipped down the ramps a bit, but all the eggs do drop and land down in the channel nicely. So I've now got 200 females. So that's always going to be more beneficial when you're going for mutations. The more females the better. Some of the bigger tribes, they'll all end up with 500 females, and alt tribes with another 500 females, and all sorts of stuff to be able to get their mutations quicker. But I found that when you hit about 200 females, you're in good standing to get a mutation basically every time you mate. So 200 I'd advise. Any more than that, it can become overkill, but you will pretty much guarantee your mutation. So anyway, the last video we showed how to get up to stacking your mutation, so stacking a melee stack up to 20 out of 20 and so on. Now, this video is going to show you how to get quicker mutations once you get past that 20 out of 20. When you mate and you've got 0 out of 0 mutations, so you're getting your very first mutation, you've got a 7.31 chance of getting that mutation. Now, every dino will have these 7 stats. So when you think you've got a 7.31 chance of getting a mutation, it's spread across 7 stats. So unfortunately, that brings you down to less than 1% chance of getting a mutation. Because it is the chances are spread across all 7 stats. So when you get to 20 out of 20, what will happen is your chances will drop even more. You'll end up halving it and getting to about 0.45% chance of getting a mutation in the stat you want. Now that grind is real. It really is tough. I've done it, I've tried it, and sometimes I'd go 3 weeks without getting the mutation in the stat I wanted. It is rough. So this video is going to show you how to overcome that grind. So what we want, you may have seen it on several dinos if you're on official, things like the Rexes and the Thylers. Thylers have been there for years, is negative mutations. Now what that means is you want to have negative mutations on one side, that includes your stack, and you want 0 on the other side, which is your clean females. So to get that, because when you have that, it'll effectively bring you to 0 out of 0 on both sides. The negative will count to the game as 0. Now, to get negative mutations and to get them on one side, what you'll have to understand a little bit is the game isn't designed for it. It's not a feature of the game. It's actually a bad coding between a certain amount of numbers. So the mutation stack you want to get to negatives is between 2.3 and 2.9 billion mutations. Now, once you get to that sweet spot, you'll end up with negative mutations. So to get negative mutations, it's basically you just add mutations together. So if you've got a dino with 100 mutations on it, or a dino with 20 mutations on it, you add that with another one, and you mate it with another one that's got another 20 mutations, and then that'll add together, like we discussed in the last video. Both sides always add together. So every time you mate a dino with any mutations with another one with any mutations, they add together. You've got to keep continuing to mate those together until you get into the billions. Now, what you'll see here is them increasing. So if you look at the Ancestry on this, you'll see that I've got lots of mutations on both sides, but still not enough. So when you add them together, you'll still keep adding these mutations and stacking them and adding them and stacking them and adding them until you end up with insane numbers. You've got to be careful, because when you get past the certain point, you'll end up with this. And as you can see, I've got negative mutations on one side, but I've also got a shit ton of mutations on the other side. Now, this is wrong. This is broken. I've done this one incorrectly, and it'll never work. Because what will happen now is when you mate this one again, even though it's negative on one side, it's so positive on the other side, what will happen is the game adds those two numbers together, but it adds them together in a way that it thinks that that negative is a positive. So even though it's negative on one side, when you add these together and you mate this against a clean male, you'll end up with a shit ton of positive mutations. That negative gets taken away by that positive on the other side. So I need to mention this because this is where I had my downfall when I was first going for the negative mutations. So make sure when you're stacking mutations that both sides together added up equal between 2.3 and 2.9 billion mutations. If they add up beyond that point, you'll end up in a mess like this one here. So anyway, this one here is what we're looking for. Now, when we look at the Ancestry on this one, I will actually just pod it up quick because it's easier to see the numbers in the pod because it shows you all of them. So on this one, if you look at both sides, you'll see that I'm at massive amounts of positive mutations on both sides. So that is 1,487,000 on both sides. Now added together, that gives me 2.86 billion, which is just within the sweet spot that I need. So you take that once you've stacked your mutations, and even if it's just got one mutation on one side and 2.3 billion on the other side, as long as it's within that threshold, when you add them, they'll end up being negative. So you can have, 1 billion mutations on one side and 1.5 billion mutations on the other side. When added together, when you do the next mate, both those sides get added together, and you'll end up within that negative region between 2.3 and 2.9 billion. So anyway, we've got it ready on this one. So if I enable mating, and we've got a clean female. So even though I have mated this, because I'm trying to bring my levels down, you'll see that here. No, this is wild. Is it? No, it is mated. So this is just for me trying to bring levels down. But you'll see it's 100% clean. So it's got 0 mutations on one side, 0 mutations on the other. And this one we've got over here has 1.48 billion on both sides. So what you'll get from this one is you'll combine those two. So you'll end up on the male side with what should be about 2.86 billion. But what will end up being negative mutations. And on the female side, you'll just end up with 0. So what you'll build out of this is going to effectively be 0 on one side and 0 on the other side, because the negative will act as a 0. And that's what we're looking for. So I'll just let these finish mating and I will show you that egg. Right, so now that one's finished mating, I can show you what the egg will do. So this is absolute clean female along with a male that is going to add together on both his sides to within 2.3 and 2.9 billion. So that egg I'll just dump in the incubator and I'll show you what happens. So what we get here now is those have added together and we ended up with our negative mutations. So now we're negative mutations on the male, 0 on the female. So that's exactly what we want. That one has actually come out a female, so I think my female is over there. So I'll show you what happens now when you end up with negative and 0. So because this is official, and that's going to take me like 2 fucking days to raise that just to show you what happens. This is one I prepared earlier. So this one is actually what I worked with. And if we have a look at its stats, its mutations, it's exactly the same as what the egg is. We've got negative mutations on one side and 0 mutations on the other side. So what you want to do with this now is you want to bring in your stats that you've been working on into the negative. So if we look at this one, this is my melee. It's an old melee now, but at the time it was the top melee, and you can see I've got 26 out of 20 mutations. So we just have a look at the ancestry. We've got 26 out of 20 on one side, 0 out of 20 on the other. So that's an incredible grind getting to 27. So what we do is we'll mate that male with our latest mutation. I advise you doing it at a 20 out of 20 and not grinding through to 26 because it does take ages. So we got our 20 out of 20 with our latest stat male. We mate it with our now negative on one side, 0 on the other side female, and what we'll end up with is this. We'll end up with 26 out of 20 on one side and negative on the other side. Now this is what we're looking for, and this one's in a female, so I'll show you what happens now. So this one is still technically capped because it's still got 26 out of 20 on one side, and we know they add together, so effectively that one is still capped at 26 out of 20 even though it's negative on the other side, because that other side is now effectively 0 because it's negative, but still capped because it's 26 out of 20 on one side. So what we do is we'll mate that female with a clean male. I'll just show you that it's a clean male. This is all the Tame Stats I did combined, one of my first ones. So even though it's been mated loads, I've been making sure to keep mutations out of it and just keeping all of my wild stats together. So this is 0 out of 20 on one side, 0 out of 20 on the other side. That is a clean male. And this one, like we just saw, is negative on one side and 26 on the other side. So still capped. So I'll show you what happens when we mate it with a clean male. Just let that mate and I will show you what that egg looks like. Okay, so that one's just finished mating. So what we're looking for now is to have a negative mutations on one side and 0 on the other, so that 26 to disappear. But we need this egg to have pulled my 94 points into the melee. So this is going to be a bit of a chance because I'm doing it as I'm filming the video. The chance of it pulling the stat I need as well is quite rare, but I just want to show you what happens to the egg. So I'll pod him up so we don't need him. Okay, so that was clean male, 0 on both sides, mated with a 26 on one side and a negative on the other. Now, when you do this, you're hoping you also pull the stats you need. Just get rid of that egg. So you're hoping to pull, like I had 94 points into melee. So we need this to have pulled 94 points into melee, which it hasn't done. But it would have also taken those 26 mutations we had on one side and now taken it and dumped it onto the negative side because it all combines once you do a mate. So we've got our 0 mutations on one side due to our clean male, and we've kept and retained the negative mutations on the female side due to that negative being on that female. Unfortunately, it's a bad example because I didn't pull my melee. So what I'll do now is go and find that male for you, the one that did pull the points, and show you what happens into him. So what you'll have to do now is just keep mating those two together until you get the stats you need in melee. So where I've got 42, I was hoping for 94. So you just keep mating those two together until you end up pulling that, your latest stat, into the negative mutations. So let's just pretend that that egg also pulled my 94 points into melee, because otherwise we're going to have to wait a couple of days for me to mate again until we get lucky with that pull. And I will go and find the one that did get it. So bear with me. Okay, so we're back at this egg. So I mated my negative mutations that also had 26 on the other side with a clean male. Now the 26 on the other side was my latest melee. We mated that female against a clean male and we got this. We were hoping for the 94 points into melee. So you just do it again until you get it. So this is, when you do get it, you'll end up with this. And you'll see now, this is the same one. It's got 94 points into melee. And if you look at the Ancestry, we're now at 0 on one side and negative mutations on the other side. So we're exactly where we want to be. So if you have a look on the Ancestry, you can see under Parents, all it was my latest melee with a negative. So that would have been a negative and negative on one side, 26 points on the other side. I mated it with my clean male and we ended up with negative on one side and 0 on the other. And now that means we have got a negative mutation male which we can line up against all those females again. So he has the stats, he has the 94 points, he has the 26 out of 20 mutations, but it's registering it as a negative on one side and 0 on the other, which means now he's effectively a 0 out of 0 and a 0 out of 0. So you go back to having your optimum percentage chance of getting your next mutation, but you've already got the stats. Every time you mate, you'll end up gaining another mutation, you'll end up gaining another point. Whenever you do that, it just gets dumped back into that negative side. So you haven't got to do all of this crap again. You haven't got to do all this crap trying to find your negatives, mating them together. You've got it now. All you do now is mate him with all the females, get the mutation, hatch that egg, raise it, and mate it again. And every time you mate, it just keeps dumping those mutations onto the negative side. And because you're only getting 2 points each time, it will never overcap you to that 3 billion or 2.9 billion mark. It'll never overcap you because you're only getting 2 points at a time. So it'll always stay negative. So after this, you haven't got to do anything else. You just keep mating this against your females. If it comes out a female, mate it with a negative, mate it with a 0 mutation clean male, and then dump it back in once you get a male. And you just keep doing that over and over and over again, and it will always stay negative on one side. So I really hope this video has helped you, because it really helped me. Once I ended up getting my negative sorted, my mutations sped up just shitloads. I've had moments now with my 200 females where I'll end up getting the mutation I need 3 times in a row. I'll end up getting the mutation 3 times within 200 eggs. Whereas before, like I said, I was waiting 3 weeks because I was overcapped. So it's so much better. So anyway, I'm going to do a quick recap just because I've gone through an awful lot of information just to summarize it. So you need to keep adding mutations on a dino until the combined amount on that dino is between 2.3 and 2.9 billion. Once you get that, you mate it with a clean, whether it be male or female, you mate it with a clean, you will end up with a negative mutation. Once you get your negative mutation, and it'll be negative on one side, once you get that, you mate your latest mutations, so you're overcapped, you're 20 out of 20, you mate that with it. Once you get that, you'll end up with a negative on one side, plus your 20 out of 20 on the other side. You then mate that again against a clean, and luck being with you, you have to do that a few times until you get the luck of pulling the stat. But luck being with you, once you've pulled the stat, you will end up with the stat you want in a negative mutation. So you've got negative on one side, 0 on the other, and the stat you want. Once you have this, you're done. You haven't got to do all of that again. You take this one and you just keep lining it up against your females, which I'll show you now. So I head back down into the breeding area and I've got my nice negative on one side, 0 on the other. And I've done it loads, but this video is a bit late from when I figured it out. I've already gone up, that was 94 points. I'm already now at 114 points in melee because it's gone up so much quicker. So you'll see by my previous mates in here. So that's another one. I'm at 100 points there. You can see I'm negative on one side, 0 on the other. You can see on, let's find another one that's latest in the list. Again, yeah, 104 points, and I'm still negative on one side, 0 on the other. 106 points, negative on one side, 0 on the other. It just keeps on stacking your latest mutation into that negative all the time. This one here, you can see it's ended up with 1 on one side and negative on the other. Ignore that, keep going with it. You see that one's 108. If I can find my 110, I'll show you how it just ends up just dumping it again. We go to my 110 melee. Is he out? He might be out. No, I got my 112 out, so I'll show you on that one. So even though it's pulled 1 on one side and a negative on the other, eventually it'll just dump them all back into the other side. So even though I've kept going with that same one and I'm at 112, you'll see that I'm now at 0 out of 20 on one side and negative on the other. It just keeps on dumping those mutations back into the negative, so you never end up at cap again. And you just keep going. My latest one, which is up here, ready to go. Is it? No, that was my latest one. So what I'll do is I'll take my latest one, sit him up here, ride him through all the females. He mates with these and the ones at the top, drops all the eggs down the bottom. You pick all the eggs up, put them in the incubator, hope for your next mutation. Grow it. Hopefully, if it's in a male, just dump him straight back in against all the females. If it's in a female, against a clean male until you get a male, and then rinse and repeat. You haven't got to do this negative thing ever again once you've got your stat into it. If you are doing multiple stats, you will have to do it with both. So I've had to do it with health and I've had to do it with melee. But you've only ever got to do it once. So anyway, I really hope the video helps someone, because I've seen an awful lot of breeders now, on official especially, getting mutations incredibly quickly. And I wanted to know why. And this is it. This is how they're doing it. If you start going for your negative as soon as, even before you start your 20 out of 20 stack, you'll have a negative ready by the time you get to 20 out of 20, and you can just keep going straight away, because you'll put that 20 out of 20 into your negative, and you can just keep on going. And it's how they've done it so quickly. The grind, when you try to go over cap, is bad. So this is the only way I found of doing it, and it really does help. It is so much quicker than just going for stacking those mutations out of 20. Go for the negatives. So yeah, I really hope it helps someone. It really helped me. I'm flying with the mutations now after this. So yeah, if you did find any kind of useful information, please click like, subscribe, maybe a comment, and let us know how you've been getting on and what you're breeding.